Come, Holy Spirit, calm us now, whisper a word in our ear, inspire our thoughts, our meditations, and give us new light, and also the grace of being aware of what you are asking us to do. Talk to us now. Come, Holy Spirit, and guide us. We mentioned how there is an invisible battle going on at the highest level, and we need to be aware of the gravity of the times in which we're living, because it's possible that our generation will have to face the consequences of a massive turning against God on the level of the planet. We don't know, but the devil seems to be very agitated at our time. Whether he knows that his time is limited, we don't know, but there's an awful lot of demonic activity going on. And unfortunately, as we know from what we pick up, the church itself is being attacked, and there has been this infiltration, it would seem, also even in high circles. Malachi Martin already warned about it. He knew things, and there are things which are leaking out here and there which are quite frightening. It would seem that there had been an orchestrated assault on the Vatican by trying to make the whole structure collapse through making the finances collapse. It was well thought out, whoever planned it. It sounds a bit demonic, but a lot of things that were happening towards the end of the reign of Pope Benedict were strange. The money not functioning anymore in the Vatican machines and so on. There was a strange period there. And I happen to have read from cover to cover the magisterial study of Gianluigi Nuzzi, who is an investigative journalist in Italy, respected, and he nearly got into trouble, but he was only doing his job, and so the Vatican let him off. But he researched very well all the goings on, and it makes you reflect, I can tell you. And indeed, a few things have come out, even recorded. There was one interesting interview I happened to see, which was one of these which they had to disguise. They do it by making the voice sound unrecognizable, like that, and they fudged the face, so you don't know who's there. But it was somebody from inside the Vatican banking system, and they wanted to know things from him. He had to be discreet, but he was coming out with things. And then they asked him this question, it was a few years ago now, but not that long, in Italian, of course: how do you see the Vatican Bank? And this answer comes back, fudged up. La Banca Italiana, grande, lavandaia. The Vatican Bank is a big washing machine. So there we are. They're trying to cover it up, but not cover it up so as clean it up, because Pope Benedict wanted to do so. And actually, Gianluigi Nuzzi does pick up in his volume that Pope Francis, when he came to the scene and realized how grave it was, did get involved directly, and he was keen on clearing it up. But of course, we've seen what happens each time. It goes up to a certain point, and then suddenly there's a brick wall, and somebody involved has to go somewhere for whatever reason. And I mentioned there what happened towards the end of the reign of Paul VI, that there had been wind that there was stuff going on, and he wanted it to be investigated, and a commission was discreetly appointed of very competent people to see what exactly was the situation. And I think Edouard, I think was his first name, Gagnon was an important figure in it. Gagnon, a reliable man, and he had a team working with him, and they were doing very good investigative work, finding out who might be involved with the Freemasons, that kind of thing. And things, of course, started to inexplicably go wrong. Computers being hacked, disturbed, stolen, or whatever it might be, but wherever there was information caught, it suddenly kind of disappeared. Interesting. And one of the people who actually was involved over the years, was still alive before he died. He's not yet dead, but he wanted before dying to get the thing on record. And he wrote a book in English, which I read, which is very interesting material. And this Gagnon, he got the stuff together, a great piece of investigation. I mean, they knew, therefore, who more or less was in the Freemason thing, and they were high figures. High important figures in the Vatican system. And so, eventually he went to Paul VI with the results of this long investigation, hundreds and hundreds of pages of it. And Paul VI listened, yeah. And he, when he heard the names, he said, Annibale Bonini, that's been sorted. Yes, that's been sorted. Yeah. These other ones were coming. And he simply said, I haven't long to live. And it was right. The others didn't know that, but he knew he was slowly dying. This will have to be given to my successor. So one of the names on the list was a very high-ranking Secretary of State, actually was ill himself and died not long afterwards. But one who was responsible for selecting bishops, which is a very important job, he was maintained in office by John Paul II. His policy was let the machine function as it has been for a while, and then we'll see later. And he, immediately after being made Pope, started to travel a lot. He went to all over the place, and he was a travelling Pope, which was a relief to those engaged in whatever might be going on. And so things carried on under the old guard, essentially, for quite a while. And eventually, Gagnon, we have to get hold of John Paul II, and this will have to be presented now to him. So eventually, an appointment with him. And he hoped, of course, that it would be exactly the same reaction as Paul VI, with a fresh Pope, and to get to a conclusion. He came out of the encounter with John Paul II. He didn't have much to say, but he immediately resigned from his work in the Vatican and went back to his country, because he saw that there's nothing more he could do. Now, I'm not in any way criticizing John Paul II, it's just that he was a man of trust, and I think he must have been somewhat skeptical. And also, it didn't function in his favour, because that same Gagnon, I think, tried to get through to him when he knew things, that there was a plot to assassinate him. And I think someone else might have told him that too. But anyway, John Paul II, again, I think his reaction was, oh, it's going to be interested in killing me. But anyway, when he woke up, after being miraculously saved by Our Blessed Lady, on the 13th of May, when he eventually came back to, after being operated on at the Gemelli Clinic, his first words were, in a fuzzy tone, Gagnon. The name of this bishop he wanted to see him again, because he realized then that he was right. And so anyway, that's the backdrop to what happened, because actually the death of the successor of Paul VI, John Paul I, comes into it, because what happened there was quite dramatic. It was only about 30 days he'd been reigning, and so eventually an appointment had been arranged there between Gagnon and the results of the commission there, because he was actually aware of things, he was well informed, and he wanted to know exactly what the results of this commission was. So he was proactive on this, and so there the appointment came, and they went through it in detail. and he listened very carefully, and he meant business, and he was going to act on it immediately. Now, the big fish that he was keen on getting immediately was the one who was looking after the appointment of bishops, Biagio. And so he phoned him, presumably on some kind of private number, I don't know, got him eventually, and explained that he wanted to see him immediately. And the cardinal in question protested, well, in office hours, there were all these appointments, he made excuses. The Pope listened. In that case, can we meet after office hours? So that one, there was nothing much she could do to refuse, and so he went. So they met that evening, and, this is true, was heard from the office where they were talking at a certain point, loud noises, high voices, temperatures high. And eventually the cardinal left, and by the following morning John Paul I was dead. Now, much ink has flowed as regards to the cause of the death. Maria Simma seems to indicate that there was something. However, her word is what it is. What is probably true, at least, is this, that the indirect immediate cause of his death, whether or not anything else was involved, is ascribable to the fact that at that point he no longer had with him the one who, when he was Patriarch of Venice, looked after his medicaments, all his tablets, whatever he had to take for his heart condition, and that was no longer happening. Therefore he was more at risk. But when it came to this high consummation of energy in that state of tension, it could have been enough to tip the balance between the balance in his malfunctioning heart. So whatever happened, that point was crucial in church history. That night tipped things. John Paul II was the man for the hour, and he was destined for that. We know that. He was a saint. But he was coming from a different culture, and anyway, they took advantage of the fact that he was away a long time on these long apostolic journeys. And so it continued for a long time. Where are we at now? Pope Francis is keen on clearing up the act, but that famous big, large chest, which we see in the photo, which Benedict XVI is handing on to him, is full of mystery. It could be full of that long research that went on into all the corruption going on at the Vatican, amongst other things, which Benedict probably felt he couldn't really handle. He had to be handled by somebody younger. And so there we are. But we must remember that when money comes into it, and especially in Italy, where money can actually be very large in quantity and going through bad channels, it's a very murky realm. All that to say that, unfortunately, the church being incarnate in time and geography, and even in politics to some extent, is in a difficult situation. It's divine in its interior structure, but it's anchored also in reality, and that reality can become very, very murky and complex. It may mean, as Pope Benedict pointed out, in a kind of prophecy, that we are heading for a church impoverished, simplified, without the structures of before, but purified. And it could be our generation will have to face it. It could be also that there's some infiltration at high level which is going to try and force an issue or issues which will lead into some kind of split. That also is not impossible, given the way that synods are handled and going and manipulated. We do not know. We do, however, know that the church actually is not merely human, and we can spend our time concentrating on the human. It is divine and has divine promises, so a certain serenity on our part is what is requested. remembering also that all this has been foreseen, as we can see in this interesting excerpt from what was given to humanity centuries ago. Our Lady of Good Success. Listen to this. It's going back centuries now. During the 15th and 16th centuries, Our Lady of Good Success appeared in Quito, Ecuador, to a Spanish nun whose little known but extraordinary life has a direct connection with our days. The Pope's infallibility will be declared a dogma of faith by the same Pope chosen to proclaim the dogma of the mystery of my Immaculate Conception. He will be persecuted and imprisoned in the Vatican through the usurpation of the pontifical states and through the malice, envy, and avarice of an earthly monarch. Unbridled passions will give way to a total corruption of customs because Satan will reign through the Masonic sects, targeting the children in particular to ensure general corruption. Now, when this was being given, the Masons didn't exist as yet. Unhappy the children of those times. Seldom will they receive the sacraments of baptism and confirmation. As for the sacrament of penance, they will confess only while attending Catholic schools, which the devil will do his utmost to destroy by means of persons in authority. The same will occur with Holy Communion. Oh, how it hurts me to tell you that there will be many and enormous public and hidden sacrileges. In those times, the sacrament of extreme unction will be largely ignored. Many will die without receiving it, being thereby deprived of innumerable graces, consolation, and strength in the great leap from time to eternity. The sacrament of matrimony, which symbolizes the union of Christ with the Church, will be thoroughly attacked and profaned. Masonry, then reigning, will implement iniquitous laws aimed at extinguishing this sacrament. They will make it easy for all to live in sin, thus multiplying the birth of illegitimate children without the Church's blessing. Secular education will contribute to a scarcity of priestly and religious vocations. The Holy Sacrament of Holy Orders will be ridiculed, oppressed, and despised. For in this, both the Church and God himself are oppressed and reviled, since he is represented by his priests. The devil will work to persecute the minister of the Lord in every way, working with baneful cunning to destroy the spirit of their vocation and corrupting many. Those who will thus scandalize the Christian flock will bring upon all priests the hatred of bad Christians and the enemies of the one holy Roman, Catholic, and Apostolic Church. This apparent triumph of Satan will cause enormous suffering to the good pastors of the Church and to the supreme pastor and vicar of Christ on earth, who, a prisoner in the Vatican, will shed secret and bitter tears in the presence of God our Lord, asking for light, sanctity, and perfection for all the clergy of the world, to whom he is King and Father. Unhappy times will come, wherein those who should fearlessly defend the rights of the Church will instead, blinded despite the light, give their hand to the Church's enemies and do their bidding. But when evil seems triumphant, and when authority abuses its power, committing all manner of injustice and oppressing the weak, their ruin shall be near. They will fall and crash to the ground. Then will the church, joyful and triumphant like a young girl, reawaken and be comfortably cradled in the arms of my most dear and elect Son of those times. If he lends an ear to the inspiration of grace, one of which will be the reading of these great mercies that my Son and I have had toward you, we shall fill him with graces and very special gifts, and will make him great on earth and much greater in heaven. There we have reserved a precious seat for him, because heedless of men he will have fought for truth and ceaselessly defended the rights of the church, deserving to be called martyr. That could be also refound in the vision there in the third secret of Fatima. That is difficult to explain what that is talking about. The fall, there's some pope, it would seem, being martyred there. At the end of the 19th century and throughout a great part of the 20th, many heresies will be propagated in these lands. The small number of souls who will secretly safeguard the treasure of faith and virtues will suffer a cruel, unspeakable, and long martyrdom. Many will descend to their graves through the violence of suffering and will be counted among the martyrs who sacrificed themselves for the country and the church. To be delivered from the slavery of these heresies, those whom the merciful love of my Son has destined for this restoration will need great willpower, perseverance, courage, and confidence in God. To try the faith and trust of these just ones, there will be times when all will seem lost and paralyzed. It will then be the happy beginning of the complete restoration. In those times, the atmosphere will be saturated with the spirit of impurity, which, like a filthy sea, will engulf the streets and public places with incredible license. Innocence will scarcely be found in children, or modesty in women. He who should speak seasonably will remain silent. There shall be scarcely any virgin souls in the world. The delicate flower of virginity will seek refuge in the cloisters. Without virginity, fire from heaven will be needed to purify these lambs. Sects, having permeated all social classes, will find ways of introducing themselves into the very heart of homes to corrupt the innocence of children. The children's hearts will be dainty morsels to regale the devil. Religious communities will remain to sustain the church and work with courage for the salvation of souls. The secular clergy will fall far short of what is expected of them, because they will not pursue their sacred duty. Losing the divine compass, they will stray from the way of priestly ministry, mapped out for them by God, and will become devoted to money, seeking it too earnestly. Pray constantly, implore tirelessly, and weep bitter tears in the seclusion of your heart, beseeching the Eucharistic heart of my most holy Son to take pity on his ministers, and to end as soon as possible these unhappy times by sending to his church the prelate who shall restore the spirit of her priests. We notice here is this leitmotif: the devil will work to persecute the ministers of the Lord in every way, working with baneful cunning to destroy the spirit of their vocation and corrupting many. Before concluding, I'd like to make a reference to what is closer to us in time, and is actually something which the bishop of the area officially recognized and approved. It's the series of events in Akita in Japan, because we know that Joseph Ratzinger did say that the message of Fatima and that of Akita are the same, and he knew the full story of the third secret, and he couldn't say anything. But the fact is that we have here echoes of what was not entirely clear in the third secret in Fatima. And we have explicit references, it would seem, to our time, because Sister Agnes was given to understand that there would be this time when there would be bishop against bishop, cardinal against cardinal. Those priests who were faithful to Our Lady will be looked down upon by their fellow priests and so on. And it is something that is also linked with the attack on the Lord himself in the Blessed Sacrament. All matter for preparation each time we're at the altar. For what we have to do ourselves is not what we cannot do. The church belongs to the Lord, but we have to be at our post and faithful to it. We do well what we're asked to do. We console the Lord in our intimate times with him. We give correct teaching to those who come to us. We deliver a message authentic and loving. If we have done that, we can do no more. And as regards the wider picture, it would help if we maintained at least peace of heart and correction of orientation of soul. For if we get too confused by it, we will fail also in being at our post. We'll be on the internet doing something that doesn't serve anyone.